When someone with narcissistic traits sets out to hurt you, causing pain isn't actually the final destination for them. The real objective is watching you unravel emotionally. They want a front row seat to your heartbreak, your desperation, your confusion, and your emotional collapse. In their mind, the greatest reward is not simply knowing they wounded you, it is seeing undeniable proof that they still have the power to control your inner world. That feeling of influence is what feeds their need for validation and superiority. For many people with pronounced narcissistic traits, emotional reactions become a kind of confirmation. Tears, repeated phone calls, long emotional messages, pleading for answers, or desperate attempts to repair the relationship can all be interpreted as evidence that they still occupy the center of your life. Instead of viewing these reactions with empathy, they may see them as reassurance that they remain important, powerful, and impossible to forget. This is why some hurtful behaviors can appear strangely calculated. The goal is not always to solve a conflict or even to end the relationship peacefully. Instead, the behavior may be designed to provoke confusion, jealousy, insecurity, or self-doubt. They may alternate between affection and rejection, offer mixed signals, or suddenly become cold after moments of closeness. These emotional swings can leave the other person searching for answers, hoping to recover the warmth that once existed. When they witness someone becoming consumed by anxiety, questioning their own worth, or constantly seeking closure, it can reinforce the belief that they still have emotional leverage. In that moment, the focus shifts away from genuine connection and toward maintaining a sense of psychological control. The stronger your emotional reaction appears, the more significant they may feel. This does not mean every person with narcissistic traits consciously plans to manipulate others in exactly the same way. Narcissistic behavior exists on a spectrum, and motivations differ from person to person. Some actions are deliberate, while others stem from deeply ingrained patterns of insecurity, emotional immaturity, or an intense need to protect a fragile self-image. Regardless of the motive, the effect on the other person can be deeply painful. That is why one of the most powerful responses is not proving your innocence, winning the argument, or convincing them to understand your perspective. It is gradually reclaiming your emotional stability. When you stop measuring your worth through their approval, stop chasing explanations they may never provide, and begin rebuilding your own confidence, you remove the emotional fuel that keeps the unhealthy dynamic alive. True healing is not about making them regret what they did. It is about reaching a place where your peace no longer depends on their behavior. The moment your happiness, confidence, and sense of identity are no longer controlled by their actions is often the moment you begin to recover your freedom. Their greatest influence fades not because you defeated them in a confrontation, but because you stopped allowing them to define your emotional reality. They hurt you because they're trying to confirm something they already believe about themselves, that they hold enough power to knock you down from wherever you've built yourself up, that with one carefully placed action or one sharp word, they can seize control of your emotions, steer your thoughts, and reprogram how you behave. What the narcissist is really searching for is validation. Proof that they matter more than they secretly fear they do. Proof that their manipulation still has teeth. Proof that you're still circling their orbit no matter how far you've tried to drift. They want to stare into your eyes and witness the chaos they set into motion. They want to feel significant by measuring exactly how much damage they can still inflict on you. And that's precisely why the way you respond and the things you deliberately avoid doing matter so much when they come at you. It's how you turn their attack into their own failure. This is something almost nobody explains clearly when people talk about narcissistic abuse. Most conversations focus entirely on the tactics themselves, the gaslighting, the triangulation, the silent treatment, the love bombing followed by sudden devaluation. And understanding those tactics matters, absolutely it does. But almost nobody sits you down and explains what the narcissist is actually hunting for underneath all of it. They are not hunting for your suffering as an end in itself. They are hunting for evidence. Evidence that they still exist as a force inside your world. Evidence that they still matter. Because underneath every grandiose, self-assured mask a narcissist wears in public, there is an empty, frightened core with no stable sense of self at all. That emptiness needs constant refueling from outside sources, and your emotional reaction happens to be one of the most efficient fuels they know how to extract. So once you understand that the entire performance is built around pulling a reaction out of you, you start to see exactly where your own power has been hiding this whole time. It was never in the perfect comeback line. It was never in proving them wrong through a well-crafted argument. It was never in getting them to finally admit what they did to you. Your power was always in the one thing they cannot script, predict, or control: your response. So how exactly should you carry yourself, and what should you refuse to do the moment a narcissist tries to hurt you? Let's dig into that today. I'm Danish, and I work in narcissistic abuse recovery. Welcome back to the channel. Stick around until the end because I'm going to walk you through exactly how to trigger what's called their covert collapse. Here's the thing you need to understand. When you refuse to hand a narcissist's false sense of power right back to them, it creates a kind of malfunction inside their entire system. They're anticipating tears, they're expecting rambling messages, 3 a.m. breakdowns, and visible cracks in your self-esteem scattered everywhere for them to see. They're hoping for screenshots. They want the drama of you blocking and unblocking their number over and over. They want to hear your voice shake, see your eyes swollen and red, know that your sleep has been wrecked. They're counting on you to beg, to over-explain, to defend yourself, to completely fall apart in front of them. So when instead you show up composed, steady, unshaken, it fractures something deep inside their psyche. When you refuse to crumble, it sends them spinning out of control. Your silence lands completely differently than they expected. It feels to them like you've disappeared emotionally, like there's no door left open for them to slip back through. This is the exact moment a narcissist begins losing their grip, not on you, but on themselves. Narcissists exist inside a constant loop that revolves around external validation. They hurt people as a form of testing. They provoke as a way of measuring their own influence. They manipulate purely to observe the results, and your reaction is the data they're collecting. If you explode with emotion, that tells them a piece of you still belongs to them. If you spiral into desperation, it confirms in their mind that they're irreplaceable. If you fight back with heightened emotion, it proves you're still carrying weight for them somewhere inside you. Now picture what happens when absolutely none of that plays out the way they expect. You don't text back, you don't retaliate, you don't post some vague, cryptic status update aimed in their direction, you make zero effort to prove that you're hurting. You carry yourself as though they never actually touched anything real inside you at all. Think about how strange this is for them on a psychological level. Their entire identity has been built around being the one who pulls the strings, the one whose presence or absence in someone's life determines that person's emotional state from one hour to the next. That's how they've operated in every relationship they've ever had. Romantic, familial, professional, it doesn't matter. Somewhere along the way, they learned that controlling someone else's emotions was the closest thing they'd ever get to feeling powerful because their own internal world felt so unstable and hollow. So when the usual formula stops producing the usual result, when the lever they pull no longer moves anything, it isn't just disappointing to them, it's disorienting on a fundamental level. It threatens the entire architecture they've built their sense of self around. That's the exact moment the narcissist starts turning their questions inward instead of outward towards you. Did I misjudge the situation completely? Was I never quite as important as I convinced myself I was? Has this person actually outgrown me? And worst of all for them, am I losing whatever power I used to hold? That last question terrifies them because a narcissist isn't actually afraid of being hated. I've said this so many times before. Being hated still means someone cares enough to feel something toward them. What genuinely terrifies a narcissist is being irrelevant, being indifferent to, being a non-factor. That's the real death sentence in their world. You create maximum internal confusion for them simply by becoming the exact opposite of everything they were banking on. They expected to destroy you, so instead, become radiant. They expected your entire world to collapse, so instead, build something completely new from the ground up. They expected to remain your final defining heartbreak, so instead, thrive in ways they never could have imagined possible for you. They expected your energy to curdle into bitterness, so instead, let it settle into peace. They braced for a storm, so give them nothing back except total stillness. This particular shift, going from bitter to peaceful, from shattered to steady, is one of the hardest things for a narcissist to metabolize, because it doesn't fit anywhere in the script they've written in their head. They've mentally rehearsed how this goes. They know what devastation is supposed to look like. They've seen it before, maybe with you in earlier rounds of this same cycle, maybe with other people they've hurt in the past. So when the outcome deviates from the script entirely, when instead of watching you collapse, they watch you quietly construct something better than what you had with them, it doesn't compute. There's no category in their mind for a person who suffered and then simply declined to stay suffering on command. None of this means you're pretending the pain wasn't real. You're not erasing what you went through or denying that it hurt. You're simply refusing to hand them the stage they were counting on. You're declining to audition for the role they scripted for you in their head. You choose instead to grieve privately, to rebuild quietly, without giving them a front row seat to watch your breakdown unfold. And that refusal, that specific act of withholding your reaction, does something genuinely unsettling to them. It forces them to sit face to face with their own emptiness. A narcissist needs to project outward constantly, without pause. They require a scapegoat at all times. They need someone else's emotional chaos to drown out the noise inside their own head. So when they can't provoke a reaction out of you anymore, they're left alone with their own internal static, and it's deafening. All the insecurity they've buried, all the shame, every childhood wound they've spent a lifetime avoiding, all that underlying fear of being nothing at all, it all rises to the surface at once. It starts churning, and suddenly there's nowhere left for them to run from it. They'll likely try to bait you back in through subtler means, a fake, half-hearted apology, a message relayed through a mutual friend because you already know their tricks by now, a social media post crafted specifically with you in mind, passive-aggressive texts designed to provoke without technically starting anything, a sudden, unexpected burst of kindness out of nowhere. Please don't take the bait. If they manage to crack your calm, if they succeed in pulling any reaction out of you at all, it makes them feel real again, relevant again, powerful again in their own mind. And if you don't give them that reaction, they start spiraling instead. Pay close attention to the timing of these attempts too, because it's rarely random. Narcissists tend to circle back at the exact moments they sense you're doing well, not the moments they assume you're struggling. That's not a coincidence. Some part of them is monitoring, even from a distance, even through mutual friends or old social media habits, and the instant they pick up a signal that you might be thriving without them, that's when the bait tends to appear. A random check-in after months of silence, a like on an old photo timed suspiciously well. It's not that they suddenly missed you out of nowhere, it's that your visible progress registered as a threat to the story they've been telling themselves, and they're testing whether they can still pull you back into their gravity. Some narcissists eventually slide into what's referred to as a covert collapse. That's when the mask they've been wearing starts to fracture. Their carefully constructed false self starts crumbling, not out in public where people can see, but privately, behind closed doors. Sleepless nights creep in, irritability spikes, addictive behaviors intensify, panic sets in, sometimes self-harm, sudden, unpredictable emotional breakdowns that seem to come from nowhere. Your refusal to react is essentially what drags their inner demons up to the surface, if that's a fair way to put it. They set out to break you down in order to prove their own superiority, and instead, they accidentally exposed just how fragile they actually are underneath it all. It's worth understanding that this collapse rarely gets witnessed by anyone else. The narcissist will still show up to work looking composed. They'll still post confident, curated content online. They'll still charm new people at parties or in new relationships, layering on a fresh coat of the same performance. The unraveling happens almost entirely behind closed doors, in the moments when nobody is around to feed their image back to them, when there's no audience left to perform for. That's part of why it's so important for you not to go looking for proof that this is happening. You likely won't see it directly, and chasing confirmation of their suffering pulls you right back into orbiting their emotional state, which is the exact thing you're trying to walk away from. Trust that the pattern holds even when you can't observe it firsthand. There's also something worth noting about the specific shape this collapse takes for different narcissists. Some become more erratic in new relationships, rushing into the next source of supply faster than seems healthy, because sitting alone with their own thoughts for too long feels unbearable to them. Others turn that discomfort inward and become noticeably harsher toward the people still in their orbit, family members, co-workers, whoever happens to be nearby, because the frustration has to land somewhere, and it usually lands on whoever is closest and least likely to leave. Still others throw themselves into work, achievement, status symbols, anything shiny enough to distract from the growing sense that something essential is missing. None of these outward behaviors are your responsibility to track or manage anymore. They belong entirely to them now. When a narcissist hurts you, the thing that confuses them most is watching you heal in complete silence. Not the silence of suppressing everything and pretending it's fine, but the silence of quietly rising above it all. A silence packed full of reinvention and rebuilding. That kind of silence forces them to confront something they've spent their entire existence running away from, the reality that they don't actually matter nearly as much as they've convinced themselves they do. And that realization is genuinely the most humiliating thing a narcissist can face. What a narcissist is really hoping to do is anchor themselves permanently inside your nervous system. In other words, they want to condition your body's automatic response to them. Every single time you flinch, cry, or feel the need to explain yourself, you're essentially training your own nervous system to treat them as the source of your emotional weather, good or bad. You reverse that entire conditioning by simply refusing to flinch anymore. Even in the moments when it genuinely still hurts, even when every part of your body wants to scream out loud, you're teaching your own nervous system an entirely new pattern to follow. That safety you're feeling doesn't come from being loved by them anymore. That safety now lives fully inside your own response, your own choices. Peace becomes something you choose for yourself. You no longer need their permission to feel it. This is also why healing from narcissistic abuse tends to take longer than people expect, and why it isn't just a matter of willpower or deciding one day to feel differently. Your nervous system was conditioned over time, sometimes over years, to associate this person with unpredictability, with the highs of love bombing and the lows of devaluation. And that kind of conditioning doesn't dissolve overnight just because you've made the decision to leave. It takes repetition in the opposite direction. It takes proving to your own body again and again that you are safe now, that the storm has passed, that stillness is not the same thing as danger. Be patient with yourself through that process. The fact that your body still reacts sometimes doesn't mean you haven't made progress. It means you're human, and you're actively rewiring something that took a long time to wire in the first place. A racing heart when their name pops up on your screen, a tightness in your chest when you hear a song that reminds you of them, none of that is a failure on your part. It's simply old wiring firing on schedule, and every single time you meet that reaction with steadiness instead of panic, you're laying down new wiring right alongside the old. Eventually, the new pattern becomes the dominant one, but only through repetition, not through a single decision made once and never revisited. This confuses them deeply, because pain has always been their reliable way in, their access point into your life. What they fundamentally fail to understand is that real power looks like holding your ground without any theatrics whatsoever. It looks like being able to walk away without uttering a single word in your own defense. It looks like sitting across from the very person who tried their hardest to destroy you and meeting their eyes with the same flat, neutral calm you'd give a total stranger passing you on the street. They never see that coming, and once it happens, they genuinely have no idea what to do with it. They'll accuse you of changing, of becoming heartless, of turning cold, of no longer being the person you used to be. Good. That's exactly the outcome we're aiming for. Because the person you used to be was soft in exactly the direction they could exploit, was still forgiving even after being thrown away, was still offering explanations to someone who never deserved a response from you in the first place. That earlier version of you was fuel for them, what we often call supply, a safety net they could always rely on falling back into. This new version of you is a genuine threat to everything they've built. You're living proof that healing is real and achievable, that love was never supposed to require someone else's approval to be valid. That closure can absolutely happen without a single conversation ever taking place. That self-respect will always outlast trauma bonding in the end. Nothing rattles a narcissist quite as deeply as watching someone walk straight through hell and come out the other side carrying peace instead of pain. They genuinely believed they were your entire world, your ultimate source, the final chapter of your story. So when you start treating them like a footnote instead, like a passing phase that's already run its course, like a lesson you fully learned and moved beyond, it absolutely shatters their fragile sense of self. Because now you're not merely healed, you've actually elevated beyond where you were before any of it started. You become a mirror they can no longer bring themselves to look into, because that reflection no longer shows a broken person staring back. It shows their own failure staring back instead. They failed to destroy you the way they intended. They failed to keep you small and dependent. They failed to convince you that you were somehow unlovable, and that failure lingers. It echoes, honestly, it haunts them long after the fact. They find themselves constantly wondering how you managed it, how you avoided completely collapsing, how you never turned bitter, how you rebuilt your life faster than they ever anticipated, how you seemed to grow stronger with every quiet mile of distance you put between yourself and them. Understand that this isn't a small thing to them, even if it looks small from the outside. A narcissist's entire internal economy runs on comparison and control. If they cannot account for how you manage to thrive without their involvement, it opens a crack in the story they've told themselves about their own significance. That crack doesn't close easily. It sits there, unresolved, nagging at them in quiet moments, in the exact kind of quiet moments they've spent their whole life avoiding by staying busy, staying validated, staying centered in someone else's attention. You becoming unbothered isn't just an inconvenience for them, it's an open wound they don't know how to close, and it will stay that way long after they've stopped thinking about you consciously, quietly shaping how they approach the next person who dares to walk away from them too. That confusion has a way of curdling into obsession over time. So what do they end up doing about it? They start silently keeping tabs on you. They try reading between every line you post. They quietly ask mutual friends how you're really doing. They find themselves scrolling through your old photos at 3 a.m, searching your expressions for any hint of a crack, trying to figure out whether you've genuinely moved on, whether you're actually thriving, whether you've truly become unreachable to them. And the more consistently you keep showing up centered, grounded, and steady, the more it slowly erodes them from the inside out. So here's the real blueprint for confusing a narcissist after they've hurt you. You stop positioning them as the center of your pain. You stop chasing any form of revenge. You stop quietly hoping they'll eventually change their ways. You stop justifying or explaining your own worth to anyone, especially them. And instead, you start doing the one thing they genuinely never imagined you capable of. What's that exact thing? You start living well. You fall in love again, beginning with yourself first. You start glowing from somewhere deep inside you. You discover a level of peace so profound that even you didn't believe it was possible before you found it. That right there is your revenge. That's your real power. That's your actual freedom. They weren't just trying to hurt you in the moment. They were trying to trap you permanently. And you're the one who broke free of that trap simply by refusing to react the way they had already predicted you would. That's the real definition of winning here. Not through retaliation, but by embodying a calm they never once saw coming. I want to leave you with one more thought before we close out today. None of this works as a performance either. You cannot fake the stillness just to manipulate them into spiraling, because narcissists, ironically, tend to be quite good at detecting performance, since performing is exactly what they do all day themselves. The calm has to be real, or at least real enough that you're genuinely working toward it rather than faking it for effect. That means doing the actual inner work. Therapy if you have access to it. Journaling. Leaning on people who see you clearly and love you without an agenda. Rebuilding your identity outside of the shape this relationship forced you into. The silence and the stillness are simply the visible surface of a much deeper process happening underneath. And that deeper process is the part that actually sets you free, regardless of whether the narcissist ever notices or reacts to any of it at all. Their collapse, if it happens, is just a side effect. Your healing is the actual point. And one more thing worth saying clearly before we wrap up. None of this requires you to hate them in order to protect yourself. You can understand exactly why someone became this way, the wounds, the upbringing, the fear driving all of it, and still hold a firm boundary that keeps them out of your life. Compassion for where a person came from and accountability for what they did to you are not opposites. You're allowed to hold both. What matters most is that you stop making their next move the thing that determines your peace. Your peace gets to exist independently of whatever they do or don't do next, whether they apologize, whether they change, whether they ever see clearly what happened here at all. That independence, that refusal to keep your happiness tethered to their behavior is really the whole point of everything we've talked about today. Did any part of what I shared today resonate with your own experience? If it did, let me know down in the comments below. And make sure you go register for my upcoming event as well. The focus of that session will be breaking a trauma bond with a narcissist through 5 practical, actionable steps. If setting yourself completely free sounds like something you want, go ahead and reserve your spot right now using the link in the description of this video. With that, let's wrap things up for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening all the way through. I'll see you again in the next one. Until then, as always, let the healing begin.